especially as a man. I personally feel it's different when a woman goes to a man's country. I personally feel we're a lot better with that as far as that power shift, that we're a lot more sensitive. I just feel I haven't got a lot of sensitivity, haven't got a lot of understanding, and I feel that will be different reverse gender wise. I personally feel from my experience.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode number 35 of the Emigrant Life podcast, where we share stories of people who left their country to chase a better life. And through these stories, I hope we can find ideas, resources, and motivation to do the same. I'm Daniel De Biasi, and in this episode, I sit down with another Daniel. Dan is originally from New Zealand and moved to Romania to be close to his wife's grandparents, who were diagnosed with cancer. They sold their business and relocated with their little son to Romania. A year after they moved, they got divorced. In this episode, Daniel will talk about his relationship and what this change did to his marriage. Moving to a new country can be challenging for a relationship, and Dan was very open about his personal life in his interview. I hope his experience could help some of you going through a similar situation. Before moving to my conversation with Dan, I just wanted to remind you that if English is your second language, you can find the transcript of our conversation in the show notes. Just visit emigrantlife.com/episode 35. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Dan. Hey Dan, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So Dan, just a little bit of background about you. You are originally from New Zealand, and you recently, over a year ago, in November 2019 roughly, you moved to Romania. Do you want to tell a little bit about you and why you decided to move to Romania?
Yeah, so basically, my wife and I were living in New Zealand, and her grandparents had raised her. So they were really her parents in a lot of ways, so she communicated a lot with them. And we got the bad news that both of them have been diagnosed with cancer, so they're getting older, but this came as a real shock. They've been so fit and healthy all their lives. And so we made the decision to sell our business and move to Romania. We'd had a few holidays, we loved the country, and her heart was really there. And so, yeah, we picked up everything. We just had a son recently, so he was probably 1 when we moved. And then now I've been here for just over a year now. So, yeah, good time to check in as well. Yeah.
Okay, so your wife, I guess, is Romanian then?
Yes, so she's Romanian. So she was born in Romania, and then she moved to New Zealand when she was about 10, I think. And then so we met when she was 25 or so. So, yes, she'd been in New Zealand a long time.
Okay, so she was 60% Kiwis and 40% Romanian.
Exactly, man, exactly. Romanians are funny, though, because she still is very Romanian. She loves dancing, she loves food. So she's definitely not like a normal New Zealander, as you know, living there.
Going back to the beginning, and you said that you, in New Zealand, you had a business and you have to sell the business to move to Romanian. So I guess making the decision to leave the country wasn't just an easy decision, because you didn't have just to quit the job and find a job in another country. You actually had a business that you built yourself, and you have to sell the business in order to move to another country.
Yeah, so we built quite a big business over 5 years as financial advisors. So it was $1 million business as far as valuation, but you never get $1 million for it. But we got a nice payday when we sold it, and so that gave us the capital to not have to work. So that's been wonderful. So I haven't really worked in a year. And having my son, I've been able to be a full-time father for him. So a lot of people, because I've been into business and into sales and everything and self-development, but a lot of people saw me as this corporate guy. And so having my son, I really turned 180 and became this real full-time father, really. I really just want to be there for my son. So I was quite surprised by that. I don't know if I'd be... Maybe before going in, I wouldn't have thought that would be the case for me. But now I'm just finding out how much I love being a father. And yeah, even this podcast, we were talking about doing this earlier, and I was with him and he started crying. And so I couldn't do the podcast. Yeah. He wanted to see mum. So it's been really beautiful being a father and then being able to be, it's made me feel like a millionaire, because being able to be with him every day and not have to worry about money and working, and just be able to look after him and take him to parks and then learn Romanian language. And yeah, it's been wonderful not having to worry about money. So that's one advantage we had, is knowing that we'd have money for probably, easily 1 year, but even as much as 2 years without having to worry about it. So that's been a very blessed situation to be in.
So what was your plan when you decided to leave New Zealand? Was it just a temporary solution just to stay closer to our grandparents and when the situation would get sorted in a way or the other, would go back to New Zealand? Or was like no, we're moving to Romania to live and stay in Romania for a longer time?
Yes, I was not liking a lot of things with New Zealand. Like politically, I was not liking a lot of things in my life, like family-wise. I didn't have a lot of closeness with my family, I felt. Yeah, I saw Romania as a closer family, like they're very close family-wise. And I saw a lot of positives to Romania being in Europe, being close to Italy, which I love Italy. And it's funny with you being Italian. So I've started to learn Italian as well. Yeah, and I don't know, I suppose with New Zealand too, I do not like that there's not a lot of history there, where there's a lot of history. With Romania, like I was at an archaeological site the other day, which was really amazing for me, and it just really gives me a buzz. Yeah, I just love the idea of being in Europe, and I suppose that kind of, maybe this is just me, but I have this ideal of who I want to become, and part of that is like the sexy Renaissance man. And so being in New Zealand just didn't really help me with that. So I'm like, I want to be more international. So that's what I've headed towards, and I'm working well towards now. Like I feel a lot more of that man now than I've ever been.
So your plans still stay like at least in Europe, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I do not see myself going back to my country except for as a tourist now. Yeah, there's no draw there for me to go back. Although I'm handcuffed with my wife because we've parted ways. We could talk about that as well more. So we broke up just before Christmas. So coming up a month ago or so. So pretty recent. But at first she was saying she wanted to go back to New Zealand. So I just said, okay, because I'll have to follow her because my son needs her more than me right now. So I'll follow her wherever she goes, basically, as far as I'm handcuffed to her because of my son. In that sense, I'll move back to New Zealand. But if I have a say in it, I'd not like to go back. So luckily she changed her mind and we've ended up staying now. But I suppose life is like that. You know, sometimes you don't have choices. But if I have the choice, I want to stay in Romania, and then also I'm planning on settling in Italy as well. So I'm gonna be based between Italy and Romania. That's my plan.
One of the things that come up even in another interview I did with another guest was that because this person married a foreign person, she always thought that maybe this person at some point would want to move back to their country. So I guess when you are in a relationship with somebody that's from a different country, there's always the option that this person might want to go back to your country. Was the same situation for you? Kind of you knew that maybe at some point move back to Romania, or that was just a surprise for you?
Yeah, great questions, man. And this can be like a free counseling session for me, eh? Hopefully not. Yeah, so I suppose we did a few holidays firstly, and I love the country, and I was really impressed with how her family was so like warm. Like even the guys kissed me on the cheek and everything, and that might sound a bit weird to some guys, but there's nothing like, you know, sexual about it or whatever, but it's just this loving, like you get hugged, you get kissed, everyone's dancing. And it was just such a shock for me because being more of an English heritage, I'm not used to that. And they talk about being in the heart. And so, I don't know, I really fell in love with that. And I was just shocked with how beautiful the people were. And so, yeah, that's been a real draw. And then with my wife, so we talked about it. It's funny you say it because we got married in Romania, and then 2 days after we married, she decided to break it off with me, which came as a real shock, obviously, after being married for 2 days. And I went into a bit of a dark spiral, like I drank I had whiskey in the room, and I ended up drinking like half the bottle or something, and it was a bit of a bad day. And we finally got to the bottom of why she wanted to break up, and it was because she really missed Romania and loved the country and wanted to be there. And then so I said to her, I said, well, actually, it's funny you say that. Like we'd already broken up, and I was like, you know, it is what it is. But I said, I could see myself being here, funnily enough. But I didn't know how. And when we went back to New Zealand, things went really well in our business. And so I kind of forgot, like we kind of moved on from it. But it was always there, but not consciously as it should be. And this is something I'd advise. I wish I had spent more time learning the language because that's been a real challenge to this day. And I've never regretted getting better at it. So, yeah. So then when we did make the decision, maybe it wasn't the most thought out decision, but we felt like it was right. And with her grandparents not being well, her grandma was especially like a mother to her. And so I kind of did some quick calculations in my head that if I refused to go, I would lose my wife because, say her grandma died, there would always be this resentment that I'd stopped her seeing her grandma before she died. So I knew that it would kill our relationship. And so I suppose the love for my wife, the love for my son, I just said, hey, well, I've got to make this move. And I realized that I had to make the move. And it also worked well with me and where I wanted to go in life. Like, it was good timing. So, yeah, but then maybe this is a wrong perception for now, but my wife had seen me like very strong and very just a winner in a lot of ways. So ever since we've met, I've just been doing really well in life. So for example, I'm just dominant, and I was one of the best guys in the company too. And then I sold insurance, and I was like one of the best guys in the company. I was probably the best guy in the company for a bit. And then I became the best manager in the company. And then we started a business. Then that went really well. And so she's seen me in so many situations where I was this infallible, like man of strength. But then coming to Romania, and I knew this would happen, it was like I was on the back foot straight away, and not knowing the language was an instant disadvantage. And so everyone would be speaking Romanian around me, and I would know nothing of what they were saying. And I was constantly asking, hey, what are you saying? What's going on? And I did not know basically any words. Like now being here a year, I can pick up a lot. This definitely made me, I suppose, feel very weak, and then feel like an outsider too, because being part of the tribe, say being part of her family, they'd start speaking fluent Romanian to me. And then I'd say no insulig, which is like, don't understand. And then they'd go, oh, that's right, you're a foreigner. And then I'd see the energy change, like, you're not part of the group. You are, but you're not. And this kind of feeling of being an outsider. And this just started a bit of a ball rolling. And then it's just interesting how we've now, like, basically my wife left me, which came as a shock too, because, yeah, I don't know, you could go like we've grown apart as well. So there's a lot of different elements to this, but one element has definitely been this weakness of me. Yeah, like it being a weaker man, I suppose. You know, a lot of women might say that's not the case, but maybe I've lost some sort of attractiveness, I suppose, if I'm going to be fully honest. And it's been tough for me because I hear this a lot, that people who are very strong have not put themselves in a situation to be very weak, and so they cannot even relate to that. I don't know if you've heard this, Daniel. Like, you know, people who have always been in a strong position, they can't relate to being an underdog or whatever. You know,
I never heard that before, but I guess the same principle can be applied in any situation.
Yeah,
it's like being like a white guy in the country. You don't know how a black person can feel in America. I have no idea how they feel in America, for example. That could be a same situation. And for you, exactly, you don't know how an immigrant can feel in a foreign country when you've never been the immigrant in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a really humbling experience for me. And and it's definitely made me see what it would be like to be an immigrant, because coming from New Zealand, there's a lot of immigrants there. Yeah, and I had no idea how challenging it was. Like, I remember before I left, I met a woman from, where was she from? Somewhere in the Middle East. And she was saying how she left the country while it was in war as a refugee. And it's just hard to believe. It's just hard to imagine that, you know, bombs dropped on you, and just some of the stories she had, just horrific. And so, not that I can relate to that, thank God, but I've definitely had a tough year. Like, for example, her family's very poor, so we moved in with her grandparents, and because her grandma's health started to go downhill, so we moved in with her grandparents. And then her grandma passed like not long after, so we moved in about 3 days. And then I just hear this screaming in the other room, and her grandma's passed. So like she had like a fever, and then before we know it, she died. And I just thought she'd pull out of it, and yeah, we all thought she'd pull out of it. And so we then there was the changes of all the house, but grandparents are very poor and had a really tough life, and they have chickens and they have to move water to save money and all this. So I found myself at this like coming from this like wealthy position in the West to this literally pumping water for 2 hours a day, and then moving water to the garden, and then like cleaning up after chickens, and then just the smells and they don't even have a shower. So I was only able to have a shower like once a week, which is new for me. I'm used to showering like every day. And so, man, it was humbling, brother. Like, it was humbling and almost like, I don't know, like verging on a bit too much in a lot of ways. Because I mean, I suppose too, before I arrived, I had this thought like, you know, pull yourself up by the brute bootstraps. I'm still probably I still am more right wing politically. I see myself as a libertarian, and I love business, I love entrepreneurship and everything. But I probably had a naive view of that, like, anyone can do it. But I realized, like, holy cow, like if I'm pumping water for 2 hours of the day, and if I'm this exhausted just to live, like I found I would just wake up and just to get food ready and to do, like when I did the dishes, I had to turn the gas on and then heat the water with gas and then move it. And it was just, everything was hard and everything was broken basically as far as like systems, or like nothing worked easily. And I'm just like, because by the end of the day, I was so exhausted just after living. And I'm thinking, how could I build a business like this? How could I do anything commercially? And so that's been very humbling to me to see that I suppose I don't even want to think about it again, because now I've kind of pulled the plane up and I'm out of that situation, and I'm now in this beautiful apartment now, and I live such a blessed life again. It's like some people live just this horror story life like that, where you're just lucky if you even make it through the day. And I don't know, it's really tough for me to even to experience that and to see that, and like the level of poverty that I see, because I keep hearing from people, oh yeah, there's worse, Dan. And I'm like, whoa, I don't even want to hear about worse. Like, don't even tell, you know, when I see people every time basically I go to take my rubbish to the bins, there's people waiting there, you know, and they'll take the bag off me, and it's like, oh my God, So I hadn't seen any poverty like that before leaving New Zealand. And on holiday, I started to see it. And to experience that has been very, very humbling for me. And it's been good for me. And it's actually, funnily enough, driven me to make more money, to be more successful, because I want to not only provide for myself and my son, and I'm looking after my ex-wife now as well, but I want to provide for more people than that. Like, I was even thinking about that tonight. Like, I gave the taxi driver a small tip. Like, I don't know what it would be. I suppose I need to change like to 20 different currencies right now, but basically. So I gave him €1, and he's like, thank you so much, sir, da-da-da. You're such a lovely guy, basically. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, and I just thought to myself, I'd love that to be 100 or 1,000, you know, just really like make a difference to the guy. Yeah, so that's really given me a drive to do better. And I've kind of been going through such an experience. I've been like licking my wounds and then building myself back up. And now I'm just more driven than ever to do well commercially, because after seeing how bad, and this is the funny thing I hear from a lot of my friends who are doing well in different ways, they're like, oh, you know, money doesn't equal happiness, and money isn't everything. It's like, go tell that to someone who's going through a bin, you know? It's just so naive, so stupid. Because yes, obviously, I've had a lot of money and it hasn't made me happy, of course. I mean, we're talking about two different things. It's like money is one thing, sure, and to do with like 99% of what we have in life. But then, yes, it doesn't give us eternal happiness. But then what does, you know? And
money is just a tool.
Man, exactly.
It's like a gun. You can use the gun to kill, an animal and have dinner, or you can use the same gun to kill yourself. It's a tool. It's what you do with the tool that makes a difference. It's the same as money. Of course, money can make you like a not happier, but they can buy you the comfort to have less problem and have more room for you to have more happiness. But at the same time, there's like so many millionaires that are miserable. And there's people in Africa or people in the poor country with no money at all. They're like living super happy. Money don't automatically make you happy. Just get rid of a lot of problems that society creates.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And different problems. You know, like if I think of my rich friends, before I got, like there's this group of friends that I ended up getting into like the club of, or whatever you call it, you know, like becoming part of or whatever. And some of these guys had some crazy cars, crazy homes. And so my perception maybe was naive when I first met them, like, oh, well, everything's good in their life. Hopefully I wasn't that dumb. But then the closer I got to them, just the challenges that they're going through, like from having affairs or from like excessive alcoholism. Like one of my friends, he had a liver problem and then he went to the doctor and they said, like, your liver's just in a real state. Like, what's wrong? He's like, I'm rich. And then they're like, okay. He's like, no, seriously, guys, I'm very wealthy. I drink like a bottle of whiskey a night. And so, like, how ironic is that, right? He's ended up with this drinking problem because he can afford to drink such beautiful whiskey. So I don't know. It's such a thing I see from my friends who have never had any money, is to go, oh wow, you know, that guy's got it all, you know. Like, this is why I don't feel jealousy, Daniel, because if I see anyone with something. Like say I want to be you right now. I'm like, okay, I don't want to be, I'm going through a divorce, I'm going through challenges. I want to be Daniel. But then you've got challenges that I don't know about yet that could be a nightmare for me. Do you know what I mean? Or like say Johnny Depp. We look at Johnny Depp, how handsome he is or whatever, and I go, oh, I want to be Johnny Depp. And then look at the garbage he's been going through, and like, who knows what a disaster his life could be once you get under the hood of it, you know?
Yeah, you never know what the other person is going through because nobody speaks about their own like a bad things they got in life. You never know. Everybody's got challenges. Everybody's got different challenges.
Absolutely, man. And this is the great thing with this podcast too, is I'm so glad I leaned into the challenges. Like, even though it's been such a tough year, one of the toughest in my life, and I knew it would be, it's been the most beautiful year because it's really, and maybe a lot of people can relate to that with this COVID, it's really showing us what's important. It's really showing us a lot of things. And man, it's been beautiful. Like, I think any challenge, like I was thinking about this with the gym because I've just been sucked into the gym and I just cannot get enough of it. I just love the gym, man. And I've lost my train of thought with that. The love of gym threw me off.
I want to just add a little bit about a gym because I've been going to the gym a lot as well lately. But mainly, it's not just to look better in front of the mirror, but mostly like the mental health. Because going through like these things in life, and exercise has been proved in many studies that exercise helps you mentally. It gives you like get rid of anxiety, depression, all the kind of things. So people that are going to the gym, and for me, the reason of going to the gym is just to be mentally healthier and going through like this hard time that we are all going through. So probably because you went through like a lot in the year. You moved to a new country. You have to learn a new language. You didn't speak any language. You have a culture shock. You lived a life completely different from what you have lived in New Zealand. Even just going through living a air quote a normal life to living like in the 1800s from what you told me. It's such a big shock, and not even mention that you went through like a breakup and everything. It's a lot that a person can go through in just a year.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I think, I suppose the way I look at challenge has really helped me. And one thing like there's a saying like your what is it? Like the universe or God will give you what you need, not what you want. And so I kind of try and lean into that. And so I think it's been like just what I've, like looking back, it's just been just what I've needed. But I thought recently, I've never regretted a day I've gone to the gym. Like there's some things I've regretted, like say a big night where I've drank too much and the next day I'm like, oh man, what was I thinking? But I've never looked back and gone, oh, I wish I hadn't spent 2 hours at the gym that day, you know? Mm-hmm. And now I've probably become a bit of a douchebag where I just love like ripping my top off now and posing in the mirror and all this. And it's like, I've become that guy. Oh man, I've become that guy that like I hated not long ago. Like I remember seeing guys doing that. I was like, why wouldn't you just play it cool and just, you know, when you get your top off at the beach, you know, sure, people will appreciate it then, but why, put it on Instagram or why do that? And it's like, I had no idea, when you work so hard for your body, because I've always been very skinny. And so now I've got a little bit more muscle and I'm so proud of myself. And it's been such a miracle to me, man. And I'm loving how I'm starting to look. And then I suppose now being single too, like some women are finding it attractive. And so I've become this like real douchebag where I want to show it off, I suppose. But yeah, man. The other thing I wanted to say was, so with my wife too, I felt like she turned, I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but I don't know, I want to be respectful of her too, because she would have a different view of everything. But when I arrived, she turned on me in a lot of ways. Because one idea was, even though I wasn't going to work for a year, I still thought commercially, like, okay, what could I do? And one thing I wanted to do was, I've always been passionate about video and photo. And so I started to get into video and photo heavily. And that took a lot of like self-learning, like YouTube videos. And I didn't have a lot of gear. So I was learning, about different things like lenses. And so I started to get really into that. And it took a lot of time with editing. And so it's interesting to talk about now because my wife started getting really negative towards that because her family couldn't understand why I was spending so much time on the computer. So being, like you say, in the 1800s, they see value in, say, farming or doing the garden or whatever. So they had this like dainty guy, not a farming type of guy, always on his computer. And so they just saw it as me just wasting my life and wasting my time. And my wife got really sucked into that view too. So in one way she was supportive, like, hey, she knew that I was doing video and she loved my videos. She's like, you're talented. And everyone loved them when I do them about her family or our wedding or whatever, they had no problem with that. They had no problem like enjoying it when I finished it. But then through that, the turmoil I went where it's like, oh, he's a loser just on his computer, almost as if they viewed it like I was like gaming on it or something. And yes, I cannot say that every moment I spent productive. Like I watch YouTube videos that weren't productive, let's say, or whatever, but I was pretty ruthless about making sure I was upskilling. And so I got pretty good at video and photo, but there was constantly this disconnect where she viewed it as this waste of time. And so anyway, so that started to create a bit of negativity. And then I remember I dislocated my shoulder at the gym. So I was just in agony, man. And this was early on when I arrived. And so the grandma started getting really negative towards me, like, oh, this guy's a loser. He's on his computer all day. He's a shit father. And then I dislocated my shoulder. So now I was like this loser on a computer. And I was weak as anything with a dislocated shoulder. And then her granddad's like the stoic, like never had a day off in his life farmer type of guy who just doesn't even talk. So she started to go, oh, I like guys like that. Or I want a man like that. And I'm like, okay, so that's going to be hard for me to become that guy. Like I've built myself on communication. I've built myself on, I don't know, like I'm an office boy through and through, even though, funnily enough, I used to be in the trades. And so even when I came back from the gym, she said to me, oh, did you dislocate your shoulder so that I'd be nice to you? Like that. So that's how she was even conscious of being pretty nasty to me. And then say like about the language too, there was never any sensitivity around that. Like basically it was soon as, and this is just my perception, but as soon as we landed, it was like, you should be speaking fluent Romanian, basically. Like, why can you not speak fluent Romanian? In fact, they all had this idea, like, okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to speak to you in fluent Romanian. We're going to cut any English now, and then will just like swim, And that was pretty horrifying for me because I noticed too that I would kind of clam up, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, Daniel, or anyone else, but my brain would just turn off. Like, so they'd be like, ce mai faceți, Saramata, or whatever. They say all this Romanian. And my brain would just go dunk and just hear nothing. And it actually took me, I reckon, about 6 months to actually be calm enough to even be able to listen to it. Not that I understood even, but that I could just listen to it. I don't know. Can you relate to that, Daniel? Where you
Totally. I mean, we were talking this before the interview. I told you, like, it took me probably more than 6 months just to understand my first conversation in English. You don't have the vocabulary to understand the words. So for you, it just sounds just a sound. When I speak Italian with my family and somebody, English speaker, is in the room, for them, they all can hear this blah, 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 or maybe it's bubbly, 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 blue. It's not Italian. It's just a sound for them. So I can totally relate with that. And also one thing I like to ask you, because at least from my perspective, you're moving with your wife, which is Romanian, to Romania. Maybe you kind of like rely on her, like, okay, we are a team. If you don't speak the language, I can rely on her. She can be my translator. She can introduce me to a new culture. She could help me to move around into the new country, the new culture. Was that part of your kind of like a maybe plan, even like if it wasn't maybe a plan, but it was just the idea, maybe I don't have to worry too much about it because I go here?
I don't know. Maybe there'll be some of that. I mean, we've been a really good team for a long time. Like built the business and everything, and obviously got married, had a child, everything. So we've been a good team. But then I've always been really strong too. So I've limped along too. So I've been pretty, for example, pretty quick. I would just go to shops on my own and just limp along, and I would just like I learned pretty quickly how to say I wasn't Romanian. So I could say, hey, I'm not Romanian, sorry. Oh, and also I learned sorry really quick too. So I'd say sorry and be really respectful. And so I was smart to quickly learn how, so say I went into a shop, I'd say, Bună ziua, which is hello. And then I'd say, if there's an older person, I'd say, Sira. See, this is the tricky thing because there's so many different things. If it's older, younger, this, that. But I'd say Sira mono if it's an older person. And then I'd say, scuzați mă, like, excuse me. No, sunt Roman, so I'm not a Romanian. Sunt New Zealander, because they'd want to know. And then I'd say, Înțelegeți engleză, so do you understand English? So I'd basically be like, just my intro to asking if they, to explaining why I didn't speak their language, and then do they speak English? And then luckily, most people would say, yes, I speak English, or someone in the shop or wherever I was would speak English, and then that would help me. So I've been pretty strong about that. So I never really, say I wouldn't go to a shop because of my wife wasn't around. I'd just punch through. So I've been pretty smart about that. And then using the Google Translate, and then her family she had a cousin who's been really helpful for me as well. But obviously there's that though. Like with many things, she's had to say sorting our flat and everything. But she's always been better at kind of handling money and organizing things. So that wasn't really much of a change for me. Like she's always been good at organizing that sort of stuff. Like my skill's not really in that. Like my skill's always been in, say, communication. But that I knew that was going to be handcuffed moving to Romania because obviously not speaking the language. So I knew that would be handcuffed. Yeah. And so I suppose I doubled down on fathering my son. Yeah, it's been an interesting year, man. Like I haven't told many people about this. But funnily enough, I had the same day she broke up with me, I realized that I was seeing myself as a victim with things. And I just don't like that. I'd rather be a victor than a victim. And I kind of feel that like God or the universe, if you see yourself as a victim, then God will just go, okay, you want to be a victim? And God will really make you a victim, Or if you see yourself as a victor, you'll really see yourself as a victor, And I love this quote from Jesus, like, I am that I am. And there's some breakdowns I've heard of this where Jesus is talking about how what we say, like especially I am, you become. So say you say, I am an idiot enough, and you really feel it, it will permeate through your bones where you really become that idiot. So
you start believing it.
Exactly, brother. So having these thoughts like I personally would rather have a feeling of a victor, right? A victor, not of others, not dominating others, but a victor of myself, right? And victor of my own challenges or whatever. And so I realized that day, I'm like, okay, man, you need to let go of this victim thing. And then bang, my wife was like, hey, I think we should break up and just be friends sort of thing. And so I was like friend zoned by my wife. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, okay, Dan, this is a good situation now to not become a victim. So I started to get myself set up. I started straight away talk, and this is another thing. I started to straight away talk to a lot of women. So luckily with my photo and video, I was talking to a lot of models and these beautiful women, and they seemed to get along well with me. So I started talking to them straight away. And then anyway, after a week or so, my wife wanted me back. Maybe it was to do with talking to these women as well. And then about a couple of weeks after that, she broke up with me again. And I briefly talked about this with you before we press record. But at that stage, she got a bit dark and she didn't want me seeing my son for a bit. So I luckily had seen a lot of friends go through this, and so I seen them fight their partners. And whereas this time, where I did what I advised them, and I said, okay, if you don't want me to see my son, absolutely fine. Because actually, worth mentioning. So what happened was, my son was like 1, and he was starting to walk and start to get into everything. He's really full on. And the grandpa has this, it's called a bitch, and it's an underground cellar. And whatever reason, he has it open. It's for condensation or whatever, but he has it open. And so now we've literally got, it's a little step that you've got to walk over, and then you go into this house, and then you've got a 3-meter deep hole with a steel ladder. So this hole is there, which is a massive risk. And so I tried bringing it up a few times, and they said, hey, we're going to close the door to that house in the day. And I said, okay, well, that's a solution, whatever. I still wasn't 100% happy. Anyway, so one day I went outside, and it was like 11 in the morning, and the door was open and the hole was open. And so my son could just walk in, and he's starting to run outside, and he's starting to come outside a bit. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And so I closed the cover to the hole, and then I walked away, and my son walked in front of the grandpa, and he walked into that room and stood on top of the hole. And my brain just went, if I wasn't here, he would have just walked in front of the grandpa. The grandpa wouldn't have got to him in time. And even if I was here, I couldn't have got to him in that time too. And so I just felt this panic of like that I lost my son. And I had this visual of him, like his lifeless body in the bottom of this hole. And and I don't know. And I just couldn't get over it. So I went to the grandpa and I went, hey, this, like, no more to this hole, like, we're closing this hole. I don't care. And then rather than him being like, hey, I understand or whatever, he was just like, no. And so he was like, I don't care, basically. The hole's staying open, like, it's not happening. And so I'm thinking, like, I've given up everything, my family, my friends, my life I know, my business, and I only want one thing, which is you to close this hole, which I'll pay for, like, because I was like, I don't care. I just don't want my son to be able to die, on this property. And so that was my thinking. So I got pretty intense about it, to a point where I was like yelling at him, and then I started calling him an idiot, which is obviously not a smart move. And then I kept saying mort, which is die, like my son's going to die. And I got pretty hysterical. Like I wasn't like crying or whatever, but I was real angry about it. And I was still like coherent, but I was pretty emotional, and then it maybe ramped up too, because then rather than my wife supporting me and being like, hey, look, Dan's a bit intense about this, but he's right. We want to keep our son alive. Like, this hole's dodgy. It's a massive hole for our son. We'd struggle falling in it. It's a 3.5 meter deep hole. Let's close it. Or let's sort something. She just turned on me 180, and she was like, you're a piece of whatever. You never speak to an older person like that. Like, this is disrespectful. Calling him an idiot's like unforgivable. Like, basically, you're dead to me. So that's why we broke up. And yeah, so ironically, now I couldn't. So I got like pushed out of the whole house as well through this. And so, so now I'm like not even able to protect my son from this hole anyway, And then the rest of the family, because I lived with the auntie for a little bit at her house, and they were like, oh, you're just too intense. You just can't say that. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I honestly don't care about me. I don't care if I break up with my wife. I don't honestly care about me. But can we sort this hole? And she's like, oh, look, it's been open forever. Like, oh. And then she even is quite a big woman. And she fell over in the kitchen in front of me and fell hard. And so I was like, well, hold on. You fell over just in front of me the other day. What if you fell in that hole and broke your neck? Who's to blame? And then they were like, oh, this is Romania. Like, we all have holes. And so this sort of stuff, like, I don't know, my wife kind of came round, like, we got back together after. She's kind of like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, kind of. But she's like, no, I still think you were disrespectful and you should have dealt with it better, which is true. Like, I should have dealt with it better, like, say, I didn't mean to be disrespectful to the grandpa. Maybe that's a lesson there as well. It's like they're big on respect. So she literally like that was like game. That could have been a game over just there, funnily enough. But yeah, man, that was obviously a low point, and it's never really been the same. Like because that respect thing. You maybe have that with Italy. Like we don't have that in the West. Like there's no sacred cow, and I think I actually like that about the West. Funnily, like there's negatives to that, but I like that as far as like I respect the grandfather, but I do not respect him being reckless with people's lives, and I don't respect. Yeah, I just don't respect that sort of stubborn ignorance. But I respect other things about him. But when it comes to that, I don't respect it. So I did kind of overtly challenge him with that. You know, like say for example, if I see a tradesman and he does a bad job and like the building's going to fall on someone. And say to be respectful, I've got to not say report him. I just don't care about that. I'd rather be disrespectful and save people's lives than be respectful and let like a crime continue, you know? And this is where if my wife had any logic to her, but she's got this like hyper emotional, you crossed a line, like disrespectful thing. I suppose it's different maybe it's different. Maybe it is different culture thing as far as like, I just don't have that, I suppose. Coming from the West, like we don't have a sacred cow like that. Like I've had arguments with my father. I've had arguments with, and I have a reverence and love and respect for my father. But we've had some pretty intense talks that maybe you wouldn't have if you were going by that. You know, you can't question anything or you can't look at anything under a microscope. But I'm not. I just don't really value that personally.
Well, I'd like to ask you a question, and feel free if you don't want to respond or whatever, we can skip over. But I'd like to ask you the question, do you think, and this is just like your side of the story, but do you think you will be with your wife if you didn't leave New Zealand?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to answer that, because there's so many variables now. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not even. I don't know. I think she's changed a lot. I see this now. She's changed a lot as well. Yeah, and I think also like we're creating different things now. So it is meant to be like if she was meant to be with me, and I was meant to be with her, then whatever challenges you'll get through. Like we've got through a lot more challenges. So for us to part ways is a different thing. But I think it's worth mentioning with the context of this podcast is that it changes the dynamics and to be aware of different things. Like if you're going to go, say I've got a friend who's American and he's got a friend who's say Chinese and he's going to go to China. Just to be aware that, hey, you're going to be on the back foot. This could be quite tough for you. You know what I mean? Especially as a man, it might be. I personally feel it's different when a woman goes to a man's country. I personally feel we're a lot better with that, as far as that power shift. That we're a lot more sensitive. Like I just feel I just haven't got a lot of sensitivity, haven't got a lot of understanding. And I feel that will be different reverse gender-wise. I personally feel from my experience.
Okay, no, that's interesting. For me, I think it's more like a personal level. I think it's not like a male or female point of view. It's more like if you are a person that wants to help, you are willing to help the other person. For example, I moved to my country. I have a partner, and we moved to Italy. I don't know. For me, automatically, I know I need to be there for her. I need to be more helpful because I know the situation. Maybe because I'm in the situation, I know what it means to be a foreign in another country. I don't know anything about the country, like the basic stuff. Even just going to supermarket, you don't know which one is the best supermarket, where you find the best product and the cheapest, and all this small part of the normal life can be challenging when you are an immigrant. So for me, I know the situation, and I'm there to help my partner. But for some other people, feel like they have, I don't know, the obligation that they have to do it, and they put pressure on the person that the person has to do it, has to be there, and they're less willing they found less, maybe not attractive, but less normal that you have to provide for the other person, at least on the first few months or a year for them.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've been listening to Dan. I don't know if you've seen this guy. What's his? Matt vs. Japan, and he speaks Japanese really well. And Japanese is like one of the hardest languages to come from English to. And he talks about how you could be 10 years I didn't realize, but you could be 10 years in a country and not speak the language still. And I was surprised by that because I thought you'd just pick it up by being in the country.
Yeah, but depend how much willing you are to learn the language. There's people here in Canada that have been, or even in New Zealand, I met people that have been there for 20 years. They still like their English was pretty basic. Depend how willing you are to learn the language, to integrate with the culture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but this came as a shock to me. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, just the challenges of that though. Obviously, going to add challenges to a relationship too, and then yeah, I don't know. I just think I suppose after hearing about how hard it is, like what Matt was saying, how hard it is, I had a lot more sensitivity to myself because maybe this is where my wife comes from, like where you just like toughen up and just like the tough pill. But seeing what a massive challenge it is and having some sensitivity around that and some understanding like, hey, it's going to take some time. Like how unreasonable for her to think, after a couple of months I was going to be fluent. Like, come on. Looking back now, that was very, very, like that's incorrect. Like you're not going to, like imagine if I went to Korea and expected myself to be fluent in 2 months. Like I joked with her about that. I'm like, well, hold on. If I was from Korea and you came to my country, do you honestly think you'd be fluent in 2 months? But this is the problem, Daniel, because she speaks Italian, French, Romanian, and English, right? Because at school she learned all those. And so for her, it's like very normal to speak another language. So she hasn't experienced that. Like say she'd been to Korea and she'd experienced like how tough that is, she'd have some sympathy. But unless you have, like, yeah, she just doesn't seem to be able to see it. So, and her family too, like the family were just ruthless with me about it. They're like, nah, you should speak fluent Romanian, come on, and just every day. And it was also just the general put downs about it too. It was like, oh, you're Romanian's garbage, you're terrible at Romanian. And this doesn't work well for me. Like I'm quite a positive guy. So I'm like, well, hold on. I spent, 3 hours today learning. Oh, but also it wouldn't really inspire me to do much more too. Like I was like,
no, exactly.
It would just disempower me to a point where I was like, oh, who cares? I won't even listen to any Romanian then, like unconsciously, and so it didn't actually help me. Like, so, but maybe that was their way of them trying to help me and their way of sparking me up. Maybe it works for them, but it just, putting me down like that didn't really work well. Yeah. And I suppose it's made it harder for me to like love the country and love the culture when my wife's being like that with me. It has actually, maybe I need to do it. Matt versus Japan talked about this too, how he kind of fell out of love with Japan at times and it was really hard to learn the language. So yeah, I'm trying to like build up some positive experiences again. And luckily I've started, I had a couple of weeks or a month or whatever where I haven't really talked to many women, but now I've started talking to a lot of women. And it's been wonderful, man. Like I'm loving the experience of being single and talking to women. And I probably moved a bit too fast for that. Like I made myself like go up and approach women straight away, like in the first week, even when I'm like basically like crying while I'm working out sort of stage. So that was probably a bit stupid. But now that I'm talking to women, like Mother Nature will not only kill us, like if we go in the cold and we're not dressed correctly, we'll die. But Mother Nature will also like take us in and heal us. So now I've got women coming into my life now who are like seeing the value and big time seeing the value and excited to meet me and excited to spend time with me. So that's been beautiful, man. It's like, and that's helping me be more positive towards the country now and be more positive towards the whole of Europe. So I'm planning on doing some trips around Europe and falling back in love with the country and back in love with the culture. Like it's been a pretty tough experience. And so now creating some beautiful, more like loving experiences is going to be really nice. I'm really excited about it. And I've started to learn the, like with cooking and all that. So it's been wonderful, man. But this single phase now, oh man, I'll tell you, it's just a really wonderful experience.
I'd like to ask you a last question about this topic, and then maybe we can switch to maybe like a more related topic. The question I'd like to ask you is, knowing what you know now about your relationship with your wife and the situation you guys went through, if you have like a time machine and be able to go back in time to before you left New Zealand, is there anything you would have done differently at the conversation you would have maybe done to your wife before moving to Romania?
No, man. I'm really happy with what's happened, and I wouldn't change almost anything. I mean, I'm loving because I'm loving who I've become. I'm loving like my values that I've stuck true to. And I'm loving, I love now like speaking Romanian as much as I do. Oh man, I'm just loving, we should maybe have talked about the positives more. I suppose it's good to talk about the negatives, but maybe it'd be cool to even do another talk of like all the positives, because man, the positives, bro, are unbelievable. Like being like I say, that Renaissance man, like I've got this vision of who I want to be. And funnily enough, I'm creating like, I found a way to make a lot of money here, and maybe someone will be interested in this. So what I do is I book appointments for advisors in New Zealand. So like you make a lot of money as a financial advisor in New Zealand, but you could be the best in the world. But if you're not seeing clients, you make nothing. So the hardest thing is getting clients. So I was always very good at this. So what I do now is I call businesses or people and I say, hey, would you want an appointment with a financial advisor essentially? And then say if they say yes, like say 1 in 10 says yes or whatever, then this advisor goes to see the client, and then I get paid a big commission from that, because they have to give me a big cut because they wouldn't have had it without me, right? So say they make 10,000 New Zealand. If they give me, say, 2,000, it's nothing because they end up having 8 when they would have had nothing. So anyway, it's a good opportunity too, and if anyone wants to reach out to me. So yes, I've started doing that. So there's going to be good money coming in. So I'm planning on buying an old Porsche because I think they're sexy. I love Porsches. I love German cars. And then I'm planning on just traveling all around Europe in this like sexy Porsche, and then having a lot of money too, and then being able to work wherever I want. And I'm sorry, but maybe that's not the dream for a lot of women and men. But for me, and this is, I suppose, what's cool about being single too, creating what you want. For me, this is like living the dream for me. You know, like being an international businessman, traveling around, having a sexy car, like I've got a really nice apartment I'm renting because it's so cheap to rent. So I'm renting this like really beautiful apartment. I mean, there's levels to everything, but it's not got a spa or anything, but everything but a spa and a few other things. It's pretty amazing. But this is what it is, man. Like, you know about it, coming from Italy. Like, everyone I meet, Daniel, is like, why are you here? Like, they're like, why would you be here though? And I'm like, what do you mean?
There's so many people from Romania that want to leave. They go to Italy or other part of Europe or other part of there's just...
Like no one does this trip. Like everyone goes out, no one comes in, basically. Like honestly, like I've never met another foreigner. Oh, there's a few Indian guys here who work, like there's a few contractors and things, but I've basically never met another foreigner since I've been here. Everyone asks me why they're in like why I'm in the place. They all call it a shithole. And I'm like, whoa. So that's been quite interesting. I don't see it like that. I see a lot of beauty here, but obviously challenges too. But yeah, but
you see opportunities where people don't see it, and also people that are born in the same country, they just see the difference. It's like for me, Italy. I will never live in Italy, and you love it.
True.
It's different when you are born in a country. You have to deal with the situation for long enough, and you go fed up.
Yeah, but I'm a different guy as well, because I will admit, man, I'm not earning in local currency as well. So this is worth mentioning. I tried to start that video business, but man, I got just smashed commercially here. It's pretty humbling. Like trying to start a video business, man, I washed up on the rocks, like very little success and very hard. Like I could do it with more effort. I could do it to a point where I could live just maybe, but it would be very challenging, man. Like, so my hat goes off to anyone here working in this environment. Like, this is the scary thing. You just end up in this like struggle to live situation, literally. And that's been pretty scary. So there's the challenges are real, man. Like for example, we talked about this before you got on the call. Like, if you're pumping water for a lot of the day and moving around water all day, and then you're exhausted from that, how are you supposed to then be an entrepreneur and like set up a global team or some garbage?
Exactly.
Like, it's laughable, you know?
And also, you were able to get out from this situation because you knew there was something else. But if somebody grew up in that environment, it's hard for them to leave because they don't know anything else. They don't know any better. They don't know how to get out. They don't know what else to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the mindset too, like New Zealand's got a lot of faults which I don't like. But man, financially, New Zealand is like you can fall on money in New Zealand. But I have met some successful people here though. It's not all bad, but it's a lot more rare. Like the challenges are real, man. Yeah.
And also you've been you're not living in a big city, you're living in a small community.
Exactly.
So it's different lifestyle.
Yeah, and trying to build a new business, like it's worth mentioning too, trying to build a new business, say with video and photo, and with the COVID going on, with businesses struggling with that, with me having no connections, not speaking the language, and not even being that good at what I do, So that's been the challenges as well. So obviously I wasn't going to be a financial success story straight away when you run a combo like that, But I still made okay money. I mean, I made definitely enough to cover for the month. So I did, but I definitely have seen some challenges with that. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question because I guess you're staying in Romania because your ex-wife and your child is there. If you didn't have this string that you have to stay in Romania because of your family, would you stay in Romania because you see opportunity, because you like the country, or you would go somewhere else?
Like before I had my son, I had this perception of me that I'm like this, businessman, like this, whatever, right? And even some of the negative sides to that, right? Like cold or whatever that you could say or whatever, maybe. Mm-hmm. But then as soon as I had my son, I just became this overnight loving father. So firstly, I went, I don't want to make $1 trillion and impress my son. So I was working till all hours of the night. And my wife came through. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I want my son to be proud of me." As I'm running all these things through the printer. She's like, "He doesn't need you to be a millionaire or whatever. He needs you to be a father." And luckily we had the resources where I could really sink into that role and really be there for him and be there for her. So I was able to become this really loving father where I had a sickly amount of time with him. So I've just I suppose I've never experienced love as deep as this with my son. And man, he's just the most amazing little dude. He's taught me so much. And so I just can't leave him now, and I can't. So if she goes to Egypt, I've got to go to Egypt with my son, right? Because for now, till he's at an age where, because I'm definitely over with my wife. So till he's at an age where he can be, say, living with me full time, if my wife wants that, or that's an option, or whatever, I've got to follow her lead now. But he loves his mum. He's mama's boy. We all maybe are. So he loves his, and it's different energy that he needs. So so that's answering that, man. So I'm trapped. Even if I have to work some job, in a field, if I'm close to my son, I'll take that pain. He's just the ultimate to me. So that he's my number one focus in life now. And it's even if I don't think it is, my actions will show that. Even today, I went and picked him up and I hung out with him all day, and I'm a really good father, by accident. I didn't see it happening. It hasn't been a conscious decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you have any particular advice you want to give to the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'd say double down on the language as much as we can. I'll speak to myself here as well, obviously. Any language you learn is going to be good. Romania is one of the easiest coming from English, so it's easy. But it's just such a challenging mountain that we have to climb one step at a time, and it feels like we're making no progress, but we are, and that's going to help tremendously. Now I'm in a different world now that I know some more language. So the language, be ruthless with yourself about learning that. Be disciplined about learning that. I feel. Would you agree with that, Daniel?
Oh, totally. I mean, our situations are a little bit different. I mean, for me, learning English opened up so many different doors, so many different opportunities, just because English is it's a universal language. So the knowledge you can gain through English is, there's no other language that can give you the same kind of knowledge. But definitely, I mean, if you want to live in a country, if you want to create a life in a country, you have to learn the language. It's the only way to communicate with people and create connection with people. There's no other way.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. And I think too, one thing I've noticed, with the gym, I've been going pretty hard in the gym for 3 years, and only now am I seeing like some results where I'm going, whoa, like I'm seeing like a real transformation now, and I'm really like happy. Like there's obviously levels to everything, but I'm really happy with my body now, and I'm going, whoa, like, you know, and I think, you know, we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in like 3 or 5 or 10, you know. So I think it's having that long-term vision. This is what I've done with Italian. I'm like, okay, I'm going to chip away at Italian as well. And so I'm starting to learn Italian, like, "Lei capisce italiano? Buongiorno." And then, "Da, signore." So I'm learning, and I love it, man. And I'm like learning Italian food. And so I think we just chip away, we'll get there, and be kind to ourselves, and don't put pressure like, hey, it's going to take time, and be kind. Like, yeah, I'm maybe too kind to myself, but I'm like, hey, it's like you're on the right track. So that's my advice, is like, be kind on yourself too, and be like loving and understanding as far as it's going to take time and effort. Like say with the gym, you know, it's like, don't expect to be looking amazing straight away, or, you know, just keep showing up. And I noticed this at Christmas time, bro, like all the people who looked amazing and or who were like had nice bodies, and funnily enough, I was there the whole time through as well, and I'm starting to be pretty happy with my body. We're working out all through Christmas. And it was funny because as Christmas rolled by, I was just horrified with the days off, because I'm like, hold on, but that's leg day I'm missing, or that's chest day. No, like, and so we were in such a strict schedule with working out, you know, and it's the same with the language. Like that discipline will help us. So, and this is something I'm working on now, is having discipline, that doing it when we don't want to do it, you know, as like be more ruthless about making myself do it when I don't want to do it too. Like for example, say with Romanian, not learning the language because I'm a bit shitty at like my ex-wife, and then I'm a bit off the country. That's not a good decision to do. Like I need to be every day learning the language, eh? Like a tree too. We plant a tree, we can't get the fruit straight away. It takes time, isn't it? Like there's always that delay of time, eh?
Yeah.
It's everything takes a bit of time, and we're so impatient, you know. Like after my wife leaves, it's like, I want a woman now. Like we want more money. I want the Porsche now. I want the Rolex now. But it's like when we do the right moves, when we backwards engineer it, like say a stupid $10,000 Rolex, you go, okay, well, how do I get excess of 10,000 then? How much do I need to earn, say, a month to like bank enough to get 10,000 together, you know? So that's what I've been pretty smart about doing, is like, say with the language, like say Italian, bro, I'm like, okay, rather than just watch a movie, I'm like, I'll watch an Italian movie, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Then thank you so much for sharing your story on the podcast. If people wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'm over the internet a bit, so Dan Lentz or Daniel Lentz, so with Lentz. But yeah, should be easy to find me on Facebook. I love Facebook, and Instagram is Dan_Lentz or something. But yeah, should be pretty easy.
Sweet. And as usual, all the links and everything will be in the show notes for people so they can find you easily. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. That was a pleasure.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, for my free counseling session as well.
It's not free. I'm going to send you a bill. Don't worry.
Oh, nice. Nice. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. You can find the show notes with everything we discussed at emigrantslife.com/episode 35. If you want to support the show, you can share this episode with your friends, and you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. If you want to be on the show and share your story, you can visit emigrantlife.com/yourstory. Thanks again for listening. Talk to you in the next one. Ciao.